Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to be joining you this evening from Northwestern University. My name is Fritz Burgher. I'm an assistant director of admission here at Northwestern. Obviously, I'm not currently in Evanston though, and behind me is actually my own hometown. This is the view across the street from where I grew up. So I'm so thrilled to be joining you tonight to discuss the rural student experience at Northwestern. This is a conversation that has been historically really difficult to coordinate because of the logistics present in reaching a lot of rural communities at once. But in this pandemic, we've all had to kind of go online virtually, and it's really allowed for programming like this to become possible, where we can reach a lot of rural communities at one time. So throughout the program tonight, we're really hoping that we can answer as many of your questions as possible, share some insight about our own experiences as students and alums at Northwestern, and hopefully bust some myths maybe, if that's where the conversation takes us regarding what it's like for rural students to attend college, highly selective institutions, and specifically Northwestern. So I'm joined tonight by two current undergrads who I'm thrilled to share this event with. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get the conversation going. So throughout the program tonight, feel free to drop questions in the sidebar here right next to me. And we'll get through as many of those questions as we can during this program. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll pass it off to Henry to introduce himself.
Thank you so much. My name is Henry, and I am a master's student in the School of Education and Social Policy. But I also studied at Northwestern for undergrad. And I came to Northwestern from my small town, Norwich, Vermont. And I was one of two students in my class from the state of Vermont. So 2 out of some 1,900 students, pretty small, but honestly, it was so worth it, and I'm excited to share more about why in a little bit. But for now, I'll turn to Lucy.
I am Lucy Widener. I am a senior from Fishersville, Virginia. There was absolutely no one at Northwestern my first year that was from my area of Virginia. The only other Virginians were from DC. I am a double major in environmental science and English, and I'm really excited to talk with you all.
Fabulous. Thank you both so much for joining us tonight. And as I mentioned, I too am a Northwestern alum, class of 2014. But before coming to Northwestern, I was born and raised in a little place called the Amana Colonies in rural Iowa, about 30 minutes west of Iowa City. So shout out to my fellow Midwesterners tuning in tonight. Before I attended Northwestern though, I went to a small public high school, graduated with a class of about 100, 110, and then came to Northwestern. So really excited to kind of dive into the conversation again. As the chat says, feel free to drop in your questions as we go on tonight. First question though, I wanted to pose to my fellow panelists. We'll start with you, Henry. What did your journey through the college admissions process really look like when you were going through it here about 5 years ago?
I remember looking at a lot of different schools' education programs because I knew I wanted to be a teacher for some time. And when I came across Northwestern's very small School of Education and Social Policy, I thought, wow, I would be so excited to kind of find this small community in a medium-sized school so that I can really connect with people in my program and kind of dive in deep to my field. And then I knew that I'd also have opportunities to expand into other communities at Northwestern. So Northwestern kind of became my top choice in that regard. And in terms of applying, I remember writing my Why Northwestern essay and just trying to think about what I wanted to show Northwestern, about why I just knew that I would do whatever it takes to go and become a member of CESP and get to live the CESP love that I'd heard such wonderful things about from connecting with students in the admissions office.
Awesome. Your stab at it, Lucy?
Yeah, I think that when I was applying to colleges, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to major in. I was so undecided. I was even undecided completely on the type of college experience that I wanted, simply because I didn't really know what was out there. People were always saying, oh, do you want a rural or urban experience or big or small school? And I was just so overwhelmed by all of those questions because I had never really been anywhere but Fishersville, Virginia. I didn't know how I was supposed to choose what I might want out of my college experience. And so what really attracted me to Northwestern when I was applying was the feeling that in a lot of ways, it could end up being the best of both worlds. Like, it was a very small campus, very walkable. It felt like you were on a campus, but it was next to a big city. It wasn't too big. It wasn't too small. There was just like a lot of the best of both worlds. There's a little bit of every type of college experience. So that way I didn't feel like I had to choose one or the other, the city school or the small town school, the big, huge 40,000 person school or the really small, close knit school. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I know, as they've both been talking about, when I was going through the college admissions process now about a decade ago. So right when Northwestern started to go digital for the application process, thinking about where I wanted to go was a very convoluted puzzle. I knew I wanted to go beyond my little corner of the world there in Eastern Iowa, but I wasn't sure exactly what sort of environment I was really looking for. I was definitely, like I said, I'm from a 40-person village, so anything was going to be bigger than that. And I knew geographically I wanted to be challenged, but I didn't want to be overwhelmed. And Evanston and various other college towns really appealed to me because I felt like it wouldn't be diving into something that I felt unprepared for. But then also with Northwestern, as I think they both kind of touched on, is there's so many then more opportunities beyond the campus itself. Being able to pop into Chicago for a class or an extracurricular activity or for fun, just going to have a meal in the city in one of the different neighborhoods. Being able to go explore the different museums, whether it be the Art Institute, the Field Museum, you name it. There's a lot to do in Chicago that really attracted me then beyond just the academic programs or other specific activities that I was really excited to be a part of. But as I was navigating that college admissions process, I was definitely a bit behind the eight ball. I did not have the luxury of having a lot of college guidance. I had about two, I think, guidance counselors at my high school. Unfortunately, one of them really took me under her wing and tried to point me in the right direction to stay on top of deadlines and whatnot. But I definitely was applying at a time where I could get away with waiting until the last minute. And that's certainly not the case now. So the fact that you all are tuning in tonight, I hopefully will continue to provide some little tips and tricks about the admissions process. So you don't be like me and wait until after Christmas to start cranking out your personal statement and give yourself the best shot of giving yourself some really good options when you apply to college, whether it's at Northwestern or elsewhere. It looks like we already have an exciting question here coming at you though, Henry, from Jackson. As a fellow Vermonter, he writes, just down the road, what is the transition to Evanston like from having come from the Upper Valley? We'll just knock that one right off the bat here.
Wow, that's so exciting. Not a whole lot of folks from Vermont come out to see the school. So the power of virtual. Yeah, so the Upper Valley, between Vermont and New Hampshire, right on the Connecticut River, wonderful community. And I love how I can go to Danowitz General Store and bump into my sixth grade teacher in the parking lot, give them a hug. And I was really looking for a college that had a strong emphasis on community and collaboration the same way my high school did. And I think that I was able to find that community at Northwestern, but the difference was just that the diversity of thought and breadth of experience, having students from all 50 states, over 75 different countries in the classrooms around me, and getting to meet people not only in classes, but also lots of the student organizations I've been able to join at Northwestern. Like my children's theater group has several international students, and then it's not just, people who love to do theater, which was for the most part my friend group back in the Upper Valley. But here, our director was a environmental engineer, and that's his passion, and he just decided to do the kids theater group for fun. So it's really not uncommon at Northwestern to meet folks who are really excited to meet the other people here, and to kind of decenter your own experience and just open yourself to learning about other people's backgrounds and how, just being a more considerate neighbor here is going to fuel the different ways you approach your learning, not only at Northwestern, but as you continue beyond the classroom as an alumni.
Awesome. That's a great answer right there. And also I see so many of y'all currently giving shout outs to your hometowns. So awesome to see such a great geographic diversity tuning in tonight. Really excited to have you all. So keep on filling up that chat with your questions. Hopefully we'll get to as many of them as we can tonight. So next question though that I kind of wanted to toss your guys' way. What were some of your biggest concerns coming from a rural background and going off to college? Did you feel any sort of pressure? What sort of anxieties were top of mind for you? Were you dead set on just getting out and going to a place like Northwestern? Where was your guys' head at? Lucy, if you want to kick us off with that one.
Yeah, I kind of have a fun anecdote a little bit for this. It was my very first night on Evanston's campus here at Northwestern, and I was going to meet some new people that I just met that day to go to an event, and I was walking alone at night for the first time ever in a big city, coming from an area where you would never even walk places because you would drive. And so I was very kind of not scared, but definitely a little bit freaked out. I remember calling one of my friends at home and just talking with her on the phone as I walked, because I was like, I don't know, I just felt safer. And so that was one thing, the safety aspect. And, I had heard a lot of things about Chicago coming here before I got here. And that was something that did definitely worry me. That was never something that I had thought about before. And I think that fear was put to ease so quickly. Northwestern's got a lot of really cool safety programs on campus, including a blue light system, as well as basically a free Uber for students from 7 p.m. until 3 a.m., where you can just on an app, text or call, and a free safe ride will show up real quick to take you anywhere you might want to go within about a 3-mile radius of campus. So there are safety measures like that. But I also think just the speed with which I got used to a new place that was so different from where I'd always grown up kind of just surprised me. I felt so comfortable in Evanston so quickly. It didn't take me that long at all, where I was just walking home alone at night from the library, from wherever, with headphones in, not really worried about any sort of safety issue. And I think that was one thing I was worried about, that I was surprised how quickly those fears were put to bed. Yeah.
Great. Henry?
I think that my biggest concern was that my core friend group from not only high school, but also kids from summer camp that I'd known since I was 7 were all really staying in Vermont. And I had such a fear of missing out on the opportunities to be with them all the time. And I was so pleasantly surprised coming to Northwestern that through the programming Northwestern offered right off the bat, like Lucy said, through Wildcat Welcome and getting to meet so many people, I couldn't believe that I would become so close with people in 1 year versus the people I know all my life in Vermont, to the point where now I come home from Northwestern in the summer, I go to Vermont, I go to camp, and I see those friends, and it's wonderful to connect with them. But then I also get so excited going back to Northwestern to see all my college friends. And I'm thinking about living with people and staying in Chicago when I graduate, even though I came in thinking I really wanted to go back to New England afterwards. And so I kind of have this identity crisis of which one is home right now. I will say, though, that my freshman year, pretty good indicator. I told my mom as I was leaving in January, I said, well, all right, I guess we gotta fly home. And she wasn't too happy about that. But she knows, Vermont will always be home in the long run. But I think it's okay to have multiple homes. And Northwestern really quickly grew to be a second home for me.
Yeah, I totally hear you guys on that stuff. I think Lucy touched on something that I kind of do want to talk a little bit more about, and that is that safety and security about coming to campus and being close to Chicago. I know for myself, this is really embarrassing to admit, but it took me probably close to 3 quarters before I went into Chicago by myself. I just was not familiar with public transit. Having grown up where I did, like we did not have public transit back home significantly. And the thought of having to like navigate that to this day, sometimes like when I go and I travel, visit new places, still kind of gives me anxiety. But fortunately at Northwestern, the as part of Wildcat Welcome, our orientation program, students are often introduced to different public transit systems in Evanston and then in Chicago largely, whether it be the buses, the elevated train, or the Metro. Both of those trains actually have stops just off campus, about a 10 15-minute walk if you're really dragging your heels when you leave campus there. And those get you downtown relatively quickly, anywhere from about 30 to 45 minutes. So pretty casual trip that way. But regarding safety and security, I know you touched a little bit on it already, Lucy. Were either of you concerned about coming to a more urban suburban environment, and to what level were your fears allayed once you enrolled and began to experience Northwestern? Either one of you want to hop on that first?
I mean, I can just
Perfect,
a
thanks.
little bit what I kind of started to say, and that again, there are definitely safety measures that Northwestern takes that are really nice to know that are there. Safe Ride is definitely one that I mentioned. However, I've never taken Safe Ride because it was late at night and I was afraid of walking home at night. I've only ever taken Safe Ride because I was tired or it was cold out or it was raining. That's how I'd utilize that resource. So really, I think it's, it's like that thing when you start driving for the first time, it takes you about 3 days to feel super comfortable in the car, and suddenly it's like, oh, I've been driving my whole life. At least for me, that was my experience, and I think the same thing kind of happened when I came here. It did not take me long to feel like, no, this is my space. And just as I got to know the street names and as I spent time exploring the areas with the new friends that I was making through various programming at Northwestern, I just became more comfortable. And it was just a very, very quick transition to feel like, no, this is my space and I do feel safe here.
Totally. I think while I feel comfortable going alone down to the city, like last weekend, I hopped on the elevated train to go meet up with my friend to grab bagels. We could have gone somewhere in Evanston, but I was like, I really want to try Chicago Bagel Authority, and they were so good. I brought back a whole half dozen, and they're in my freezer. So they're great for my morning commute. And actually, I also wanted to just touch on that while the CTA is super effective, I think that being in Evanston, especially if you're heading around in some of the nearby areas, like if you're going west or if you're going down to Rogers Park or up north towards Winnetka, I'm on my teaching practicum right now. And so to get to the high school I'm at in Winnetka, I, instead of walking down and getting the Metro rail at Davis, it's just such a beautiful walk along the lake that I either walk if I have enough time, or I rollerblade. And I just love it. It kind of transports me if I'm like back in Vermont. The one thing I will say though, and if this is rather embarrassing, I have a fear of the skunks around campus. And I will say that my worst nightmare did come true last night. I was on a jog and I went by some shrubs, and a little skunk tail popped up and sprayed me. But that is so rare and won't happen to you at Northwestern. But if it does, you will probably have a group chat of friends where you can say, "What do I do?" And they will say, "Vinegar, tomato juice. Where are you? I'm going to come help." And then you have to say, "There's a pandemic. Don't come." "Okay, yes, come in a mask. We're going to work it out." So anything that happens, people will immediately know and help you, even at the most bizarre circumstances, as rare as they are.
Oh my goodness. That, to be fair though, I have had issues with skunks back home in eastern Iowa, so you're really never that far from home, I guess, is another way to pivot that experience, that little anecdote there. We're starting to get some questions coming in here. So I want to hop on Broden's question right off the bat here. Do rural students tend to explore Chicago during their free time, or have you been more comfortable finding things to do in Evanston? I definitely think this is something that's super subjective for each individual student at Northwestern. I know in my experience that was certainly the case, and I'm interested to hear what you two have to say as the current student. So, Henry, want to come back to you real quick and kick us off on that? Thanks.
Yes, I do try to get down into Chicago at least once a week, even if it's during a weekday night. I think that a lot of Northwestern programming in the past has been an outstanding way to just, you can meet friends on these trips as well. And when I say trips, I mean that Northwestern sponsors a lot of arts exhibitions downtown that you can go and see. Like I remember with Willard Residential College, where I lived my first 2 years on campus, you could just sign up and go see shows at Broadway in Chicago. I went to see Wicked, Dear Evan Hansen, Mean Girls, as well as new works at Steppenwolf and Looking Glass. And I signed up with my friend Julia, who came with me, but then we also got to meet students from other residential colleges in the area, as well as faculty members who were, they said, oh, we're going to get a babysitter tonight, and we're going to go out with Northwestern students and check out Sweat at the Goodman, which is a fantastic play. Highly recommend. And I think that just, once you go into Chicago on your own or with a Northwestern trip for the first time, you kind of realize, wow, like I need to do this more. And for me, I was just very lucky that I started doing it fall quarter of my first year. Whereas I think some students kind of wait and then they get the Chicago bug. What do you think, Lucy?
Yeah, I think everything that you said is totally true. Northwestern does a lot of great stuff to get people downtown, not just for arts, but also for sports, like tickets to Wrigley Field or to go see the Blackhawks play. But not even just for fun activities. Northwestern also has a bunch of really cool academic programs and internship programs that work with downtown Chicago. So like one example is Chicago Field Studies, in which if you want to, instead of taking classes, you could take a internship, whether that's a part-time or a full-time internship. You just kind of get to pick your hours. How many hours you want to dedicate is how many credits you get for it. And they basically put you in touch with some sort of company in downtown Chicago. You can start working the field, whatever field you might be interested in. And you get to go downtown and actually start working a job while getting course credit and grades for it. So they also like to get people academically involved downtown. And then outside of Northwestern stuff, what I think Henry was saying right at the end there is that, yeah, as you get older, you start just wanting to go and have your own experiences downtown even more. So I would say from my experience, my first 2 years, it was all the touristy stuff. I would do day trips. I'd go down, I'd see the art museum, I'd see Shedd Aquarium. I'd go and like sit in the glass box of the Sears Tower, that kind of stuff. And then as I've gotten older, just because maybe I haven't wanted to use an entire Sunday to go all the way downtown and do all these big things, I'll on the weekends go down to like Argyle, which has some really crazy great thrift shopping and really amazing like Vietnamese restaurants. Or I'll go find a really cool place that has $1 tacos and stand-up comedy. So definitely as I've gotten older, it's become less touristy and more exploring the neighborhoods of Chicago. Chicago isn't just the downtown loop section, like the big touristy area, which is 40 minutes away. It's a huge city with so many different neighborhoods, and each neighborhood has its own vibe, its own characteristics, its own murals painted, and there's so much to explore. So there's definitely things that are only 20 minutes away on the L. Here at Northwestern, we're only 2 miles technically from the north border of the city. So going into the city could be a variety of things, and it's definitely started to change as I've gotten older. Yeah.
Yeah, just the proximity to the city, I think, provides students such an authentic education beyond the classroom that our students are able to receive here. And I can't underscore that enough. Wherever you guys end up going to school, I have full confidence, whether it's at Northwestern or somewhere else, that you're going to be learning from incredible faculty and you're going to have interesting textbooks, even though they may not feel that way 2 a.m. when you're cramming for a midterm. But being able to go and learn about culture in an authentic way, like you're able to by exploring Chicago, I think really amplifies that educational and academic experience that our students are able to have here. And just to reiterate what I said earlier, in terms of your comfortability and in terms of your curiosity, every level of that adventurous spirit exists at Northwestern. There are some students who are going to choose to spend 95% of their time at Northwestern on campus. There's going to be those who decide to move into Evanston, after a couple of years, really get acclimated into that sort of campus and Evanston communities. And then there's also going to be the type of students where it sounds like both Henry and Lucy fall into this category, where they're really taking advantage of our trifecta of locations, as we like to call it at Northwestern, being able to explore Chicago, live and experience Evanston, and then also get their education on Northwestern's campus and take advantage of its incredible resources that we have to offer here. Max from Nevada, I believe, sent us our next question here. Coming from, let me see it here. Coming from a very small high school, what was the best way to make some new friends and connections at a bigger school like Northwestern? I knew I was pretty overwhelmed when I started, but I actually had the benefit of joining the marching band when I first started at Northwestern. So I got to move to campus about 3 weeks before the rest of the first year class and transfer students moved onto campus and began their Wildcat welcome. So from the moment I still vividly remember being in the music hall with the other first years. All of us are just standing there awkwardly waiting for the upperclassmen to show up. And then all of a sudden they all just start charging in. And it's this very lively, jubilant, all the Northwestern anthems are playing. And it was just like a shell shock. And from that moment forward, it was just purple pride nonstop. A community that was so diverse in terms of backgrounds, academic interests, you name it, and really allowed me to find community from the get-go while I was at Northwestern, and really served to be the closest friends that I had while I was there. And since, I mean, to just emphasize that point, every roommate I've had since while I was in undergrad and since I've graduated has been, I made friendship originally through the trumpet section in marching band. So that's a little bit about my community forming experience. Hopefully I gave you two a little time off to think about how you guys are able to kind of form your communities. Which of you want to dive in on that great question next though? Lucy? Okay.
Yeah, I think the first thing to say is that it's completely different from everyone. I have had friends who haven't met, like fallen in with their big group of people until much later, first year or second year, when they've randomly joined a club that ended up being the best thing that they ever did. So that's my disclaimer. I, however, am extremely lucky in that I met my three best friends who I'm now living with the very, very first football game of Northwestern my freshman year. I was lucky enough to go on a pre-orientation program, which Northwestern offers a couple of different week-long bonding pre-orientation programs before Wildcat Welcome. And the one that I went on was a backpacking trip. And so there was a girl that I met on that backpacking trip. And then that very first football game, me, that girl, her roommate, and her best friend from high school all met up to go to this football game. And we've been best friends ever since. So I was really lucky. I immediately met my group of people, just kind of like Fritz. And so that was really, really nice. However, the people that I've met outside of that really close-knit group of friends have all been amazing as well. And I've met them mainly through student organizations and the programming that Northwestern put on that very first week, Wildcat Welcome Freshman Orientation. The moment you arrive on campus, Northwestern does such a good job of making sure every second of your day is planned for about 3 or 4 days. You walk all over campus with your peer advisor, who is an older student who's assigned to help you figure things out. And you walk all over campus with about 9 other students who are all going to be taking a class with you. So you immediately have a group of people to constantly be doing things with. You're learning about the campus. You don't need a map anymore by the end of that week. You'll have memorized every route backwards and forwards. And And then as soon as Wildcat Welcome ends, there's student organization fairs where you can join clubs. Then Northwestern starts giving out tickets to go to all those free things. So there's so much programming in the very beginning where you just will meet random people and bring them into your little friend group that you're creating. Whether those people end up staying with you for the full 4 years, or maybe you find something else a year later that's even better and that ends up being your group. But there's plenty of opportunities to make friends for sure.
Yeah, and one sort of myth that I like to dispel is that a lot of my friends who come from big cities or high schools with a dozen kids coming to Northwestern from the same graduating class, a lot of them for the most part want to branch out too and meet lots of new friends at Northwestern and don't necessarily want to stick together. You know, it's fun to see someone from your school every now and then. But I think that everyone coming to Northwestern is engaging in a new experience. And yes, it's maybe halfway across the country for you, or you may be coming from small town Iowa and it's not quite as far as Vermont, but it's still like the same difference of coming and experiencing a whole new learning environment. So I think that I just want to emphasize that that transition is something that everyone experiences, whether or not you are from a small town.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself, Henry. Looks, I accidentally hopped over Gemsy's question here. If I mispronounced your name, any of your names on the chat tonight, please forgive me. But asked a really good question here. How does Northwestern manage to create a supportive community for rural students when their numbers aren't necessarily a large group on campus? I know for me, there's everyone kind of is going to have their own sort of, oh, what's the term I'm trying to think of right now? With all of your identities, all your intersectionalities, your geographic is going to take a portion, your socioeconomic is going to take a portion, your racial, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, all those things are all going to be different priorities for different people. And, you know, for me, coming from a rural background was kind of a bigger deal. And it was something that a lot of my friends kind of knew right away, because I was pretty forthcoming about my background, having grown up in Eastern Iowa, and just kind of being that like scrappy rural Midwesterner. Like I kind of fell right into that stereotype. And it was something for me that I know coming into Northwestern, I definitely was experiencing some imposter syndrome. But fortunately, I was able to find other rural students through different student organizations like marching band, and then through different classes. You know, you discover folks like Henry was already saying, like there may not be a ton of folks from your home state at Northwestern, but you tend to find each other because it is a small enough campus that it's really hard to go for a 10-minute walk from the south end of campus to the north end of campus without running into someone or multiple people that you know. I remember my junior year, I actually coordinated a Iowa student dinner. So I reached out to all the fellow Iowans I knew at Northwestern, and they reached out to their whole network. And we actually organized a dinner one night at Bat 17, a pretty popular restaurant there in Evanston. So there may not always be formal communities or student groups for rural students or actual significant spaces for students from rural America, but there is absolutely an appetite on campus and support from one another, that once you do connect, you can have really cool experiences. I know that I certainly did. Either of you two want to jump in on that, or yeah, Henry?
Yes. I think that it's really funny sometimes to know someone else is from a rural area secretly, and you kind of just exchange a look when people say things like, sometimes I'll have friends say like, oh, Evanston, it's such a bubble. And I'll look at like my friend from Arkansas and be like, the roads aren't made of dirt here. So I don't know what you're saying. I mean, if this is a bubble, what are we? But I think that it's just, you know, it's also exciting to kind of be able to talk about your experience growing up in a rural area, especially if it's not well known. Like I remember going into all of my a cappella group auditions and introducing myself and say, "Where are you from?" I'd say, "Oh, Norwich, Vermont," and they'd say like, "Oh, Vermont." Like I've never met someone from Vermont. Do you eat Ben and Jerry's every day? Do you know Bernie? And I'm like, no, but I did work on a maple sugar farm when I was little. So it's just exciting to, share kind of unique experiences that not every city dweller has at Northwestern and connect over those.
Yeah, I would hop on that to say, so on that backpacking trip I went on, everyone got trail names, and I had informed people that my high school had a drive your tractor to school day. And so I got the nickname tractor because not a single person there had even like seen a tractor in real life. And it's kind of fun to be in a space where you're like, oh, like, yeah, like I know way more than you about this stuff. And there definitely have been times where I've had a conversation with someone and they like have literally said, your life sounds like a movie. Even though in my mind, all movies take place in places like Chicago and New York and LA. In their mind, that's normal life. And my life is like Friday Night Lights or something. So I think that is kind of fun in a way. And like Henry was saying, you'll be in a group of people and there'll be two of you who are from a rural spot and you know it. And all the people from New York City will be talking about something and that other person is like, hmm. And it's kind of that, like, you definitely bond with people about being from rural areas. But I also like to think that like my three best friends here, one's from London and two are from Chicago. And I think that we have so much in common that has absolutely nothing to do from where we're from. And I think so it's really interesting also to see the type of friends you make and the people that you meet that you totally agree about something on, even though you came from such a crazy different place. And so while it's nice to have the support of another rural person when you're like kind of like, oh, these New York City people, but at the same time, like I think what's really cool about Northwestern is you're constantly going to be surrounded by people who have such a different background than you, and they are so crazy different than you in so many ways, and yet you guys just click because you're passionate and you have similar values, and I think that's something that's really important to think about as well when you talk about that stuff.
Absolutely. What Lucy was just touching on, I think is so important because for so many students, college is the first time that you get to pick your people. If you attended a rural public high school the last 3 or 4 years, you didn't really get a ton of say over who your classmates were or what activities were available to you. College is this first incredible opportunity for rural students, for suburban students, and for urban students where you get to pick your people. And there is such power in that when you think about this opportunity, when you get to think about, well, what priorities what priorities do I have? What type of people do I want to surround myself with? Do I want to go to a school where everyone is really kind of geeky or like really obsessed with certain tech things? Or do I want to go to a school where maybe religion is a really important part of student life? Or do I want to go to school where there's a big Greek life? Or do I want to go to a school where there's like a large performing arts scene? Ultimately, though, a great college experience, in my opinion, is going to be a place where you are going to be surrounded with people who are different from yourself, but you're all going to add so much to the discourse happening on campus because you're each going to bring your own lived experiences. Some of the best conversations I had in undergrad were with people who grew up in places so different than my own. Granted, I also had conversations with a lot of students who were fairly similar to me. My first year roommate was from Arkansas. It's like the housing gods knew off the bat that Iowa, Arkansas, they'll be great together. And we did hit it off. But you're going to have that opportunity, whether it's at Northwestern or other colleges, to find people who are different from you. And even though your experiences are so different, they add so much to that college experience, to that student body, that during your 4 years hopefully elevates the level of discourse and level of empathy and understanding, and really informs your perspective about how you navigate the world long after you attend college. So got another great question here from Bailey. Henry and Lucy, how have you felt the academic workload shift from a smaller non-competitive high school to a top university? I don't want to say that either of your high schools were less academically rigorous than Northwestern was, but how would you discuss, or if you could, one of you or both of you, talk about that shift academically? I know I will happily jump in as well, but if one of you two want to hop on it right off the bat, take it away, Lucy.
So I will say that my junior and senior year, so Virginia does these things called governor schools, which talking to people, I've heard they're kind of similar to maybe magnet schools. They're publicly funded. You have to apply to get into them. It's that kind of situation. And so the jump from that, which was my junior and senior year, to Northwestern wasn't so crazy. I mean, it definitely was still a jump, but the jump from my sophomore year from my rural high school to this kind of magnet school that I had to drive pretty far to go to, that was kind of intense. So I can speak to that jump a little bit, thinking about from sophomore to junior year, kind of what happened. And so I think for me, the first 6 weeks were very rough because I hadn't gotten my habits together yet. And so I kind of just assumed things would be the same as they always were. And I wouldn't have to try that hard. I wouldn't have to put in a lot of effort. And so definitely the first 6 weeks, as I started to fall behind, I realized that was something I was going to have to fix. And so coming to Northwestern, I luckily had 2 years to kind of hone those habits a little bit more. And so once I got to Northwestern, it wasn't that big of a deal. But I think that the important thing is that you have those organizational time management skills. And whatever shape or form that takes place for you, I think everyone's got their own system. Everyone's got their own thing that works. For me, it's a very, very carefully constructed planner. I've got mine right here next to me. I write in different colors. I put stickers all over it. That's me. I know some people here at Northwestern who don't write anything down, but they've still got it all in their heads and they're really good about that. So I think that those things are necessary, organizational skills and time management. But I will also say that college is very different from high school in the terms of what is expected of you on like a week-to-week basis. For college classes, you'll have 3 exams in a quarter, maybe for one class, or maybe a midterm paper and a final paper. So you should be keeping up with readings. You should be ready to discuss in class whatever you need to discuss. You should stay up to date on the lectures. But at the same time, if you're the type of person who, you leave it for a little bit and then you can do 2 weeks of really intense studying, or, whatever your process is, I think that works fine. And obviously different people different people do well in different ways. But I think for me, what really helped was that little bit of an adjustment period, getting the habits down that I needed to succeed. Henry, maybe you have something else to add to that.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Lucy. That's hard to follow. I think I was a little worried about my public high school didn't have AP classes, IB classes, and I thought that was going to be an indicator that I wasn't prepared enough. But I think that the workload honestly felt like it was less, just because I remember in high school having 7 classes a day, boom, boom, boom. You always had to have your physics and your Spanish and everything done. And at Northwestern, my first fall quarter, I remember just not knowing what to do with so much free time, because I was only working about 10 hours a week. And then I had about 12 hours of class. Most Northwestern students take 4 classes per quarter, and each one has about 3 to 4 hours of instructional time. And outside of that, you have so much flexibility about when you want to do your work. And I just so appreciated the shift from feeling overwhelmed and pulled in so many different directions in high school to saying, okay, I'm going to come in and I'm going to take Intro to Shakespeare with the incomparable Susie Phillips, highly recommend. Then I'm going to try something totally new. I'm going to take a playwriting class, and then I'm going to take 2 classes that are kind of geared towards my major in learning environment design, about child psychology and design of learning environments. And we're just going to go from there. And everything was so refreshing and relevant to what I really wanted to study that it didn't even feel like work most of the time, because I was so excited to be doing it.
Oh, that's so great. Great tips, you guys. There's a couple things I want to touch on that you guys were sort of referring to. One, for those of you tuning in that aren't familiar, Northwestern operates on the quarter system versus the traditional semester that's at most colleges and universities around the country. So instead of there being kind of two standard academic terms, we do have classes offered in four separate terms throughout the year: the fall, winter, spring, and summer quarter. Most students, though, aren't going to school all year round. They usually will take that summer quarter off, go do some sort of professional development opportunity, whether it's an internship, maybe going back home, working at a summer job. I worked literally at my hometown's general store for a couple summers. There's research you can do around campus or around the country. You might do a study abroad program. There's countless opportunities to do in the summer. But the other three quarters, you're going to have, as Henry mentioned, four classes, and you're going to be taking those over the course of 10 weeks each. So you're going to get more classes under your belt than you would at a traditional semester institution. But that does mean that the pace is pretty quick. And I'll be very candid in saying that, like, I don't think the quarter system is for everyone. I think, as Lucy noted, the sooner you can start really developing and honing those studying skills, the better off you're going to be in navigating the quarter system at Northwestern. That being said, like many Northwestern students, we kind of there's a number that would probably say they skated through high school okay and then got to Northwestern and it was like time to buckle down and really figure out how to study. And there are so many resources on campus to assist you with that. The primary resource, though, that I really wanted to emphasize here is office hours. Office hours are something that I did not take full advantage of as an undergrad at Northwestern and cannot push on prospective and current students enough because there's several layers to why. On the surface layer, office hours are essentially time that professors who you have for that quarter are required to be available for you to go see in person and discuss the material that you're covering in class. You can bring in questions about readings. You can go and just learn more in depth about that. But underneath the surface is where the relationship building really occurs. You can go to office hours and not even discuss the material you're talking about in class. You can talk about a similar interest or what motivated you to take that class. And it can even be something as candid as this was the distribution requirement this quarter, but I'm actually kind of enjoying the course thus far. And it's through those conversations that not only are you going to develop meaningful relationships with these incredible faculty, whether it's at Northwestern or somewhere else, but you're also going to become on their radar. So academically speaking, if you're on the cusp at the end of the quarter and you would prefer to get, that A minus versus that B plus, they are so much more likely to give you that boost if they know your face, they know your name, and you're committed to the course by having just shown up. So much of life is just showing up. And I can't emphasize that in taking advantage of office hours and getting to form those relationships. I mean, I'm still in contact with several professors I had in undergrad, and they have been such incredible professional mentors for me. And I don't know about you two, but I've found the faculty at Northwestern to be so student focused, despite having such incredible academic careers within their own right. That to have professors that are so invested in students, but also in their work is a really, really valuable experience. So we're wrapping up here, kind of coming into the final 10 minutes of the program. And Max has had several great questions in the chat again. But the first one that I really kind of want to touch on is going to come back to Henry and Lucy here and asks, what advice would you have for rural students applying to college? Any things that you guys learned that you would redo, or just sort of general admissions tips that you think, whether it's specifically for rural or students broadly, that could be useful? Lucy?
Yeah, so I think that one thing that is really important to note about Northwestern, regardless of the crazy diversity of backgrounds, sexualities, races, religions, socioeconomic classes that are all here at Northwestern, the one thing that I think Wildcats really have in common is passion of some sort. Whether that is a passion to do something small, to do something big, to be a part of like the UN and lead global change, or to be a teacher and really want to affect and impact kids. Like whatever that thing is, Northwestern students really want to do something with their lives, even those who have absolutely no idea what they want to do yet. They just do have a passion and ambition and drive. And I think that that is something that when you're applying, you should really highlight that you do have that. You have that ambition to succeed at Northwestern. You're the type of person who wants to be at an institution that's full of like future leaders, future changers of the world in some way. And so I think that when you're writing your essays, when you are trying to compile your application to show the administration who you are as a person, make sure that you're really letting yourself shine through. You know, I know that the one essay that Northwestern has is called Why Northwestern, but Northwestern already knows about its size. It already knows where it is. It already knows all the facts about student classes and things like that. Talk about yourself and how you would succeed in those areas, how the small school or the small or being next to Chicago is really good for you. Let yourself shine through, let your passion shine through, even if you have no idea what that passion is for yet. I think that would be my main piece of advice. Yeah, don't just write why Northwestern, write why you would be doing well at Northwestern. Yeah.
Is there time for me to add? Okay. Oh, dang, Lucy, that was so well put. I guess I would just add on to the part about the writing in why Northwestern. I come from a family of small towners too. This has always puzzled me. I mean, my dad's from Woodstock, Vermont. My mom's from Paragould, Arkansas. And I said, I want to write about summer camp for my essay. And they were like, no, Henry, that is so boring. Everyone writes about camp. And I was like, Mom, I love working with young people. And camp and my growth at camp has been so influential about what I want to do as a teacher, because I really believe that out of school learning is just as important as what you're learning in a classroom. And I've really been able to carry that forward here at Northwestern with my studies. And I think now more than ever, as I'm teaching a blended, although now we're shifted back fully remote instruction, I'm seeing kids getting really tired of all of the Zoom fatigue. And I think that just finding little ways to bring in joy and passion and love into learning spaces is so key. And I've just been so grateful that it's a standard at Northwestern to bring that into our learning spaces together. So really just own what your passions are and don't feel like you have to change them for someone else to sound more prestigious or more capable of being at Northwestern. Like own your small townness if it resonates with you.
Yeah, what they said. I always tell students that the way to put your best foot forward in this process is to be yourself. And I truly mean that as corny and cliche as it is. Ultimately, when you're looking at schools like Northwestern that are highly selective, we have more qualified students applying than we do space available. So there's a lot of incredible students who we just aren't able to take because frankly, we just don't have enough beds available on campus and we don't have enough professors available to teach students. So there's just a limitation there. But with every admission letter you all receive here, whether it's this cycle or in future cycles, do not let an admit letter boost your ego or a rejection letter diminish your self-worth. That is not what this process is about. As long as you work hard, which I know you all do because you're from rural America and they teach us how to work hard. You work well with other people All right, you use that. If those of us who are from the Midwest, we use our Midwest nice, get along with others, and then take advantage of new opportunities that come across your path. I guarantee you, you're gonna be successful whether you go to Northwestern University or any other college around the country. By being yourself, by displaying what sparks joy in your life, in your application, you're going to be putting your best foot forward. And I really believe that when all is said and done, you'll wind up at a school that you're going to thrive, that you're going to be happy at. I'll be very honest, when I enrolled at Northwestern, it took me about a year plus before I finally felt I made the right decision. So give yourself time and know that there is no one perfect fit for any student out there. There's a lot of great options, but just know that wherever you guys wind up, you're going to be successful as long as you keep those three things in mind. So with that, we're kind of winding down. I want to give one last round advice, tips, tricks for my panelists here. Any parting words that you would give our audience here as they embark on the college admissions process, having come from rural backgrounds yourselves, anything you want to touch on before we wrap up? Henry?
One of my favorite quotes that I learned in high school is that whatever's worth doing at all is worth doing well because you love it. And I would just say, make the most of opportunities that resonate with you, and be open to learning from other people who don't necessarily have the same passion for those activities, but at the same time, like, you just got to do what's best for you and make the most of it.
I think that whether you cannot wait to get out of where you are right now, or you don't really want to leave and you're kind of intimidated by the thought of having to go off on your own in a year, 2 years time, I think I would just say appreciate your last year at home. Just really enjoy what you're doing in your senior, junior year. I'm not exactly sure how old most of you are, but really enjoy the space that you're in right now. I think that, I went through high school. I hated country music. I hated so many things that reminded me of where I was, and I wanted to get out. And now whenever I'm feeling kind of sad or blue, like, I'll go listen to a country playlist because it reminds me of home. And, barring the fact that there's a global pandemic and you go home and live with your parents for 6 months, like I did this past year, you might not end up back in your hometown for a while. And so just enjoy your last year. Don't get too stressed out about this whole process. I know it's really easy. I definitely got way too stressed out, but enjoy your last year, really.
Great advice. Two wise wildcats there for you all. So thank you all so much for tuning in this evening. This is certainly, like I started off the program, we are thrilled that we're able to be doing a program like this and reaching you all across the United States. Obviously, this is not an ideal time. There's a lot going on in the country, whether it be the COVID-19 pandemic, whether it be natural disasters like the fires out west, hurricanes in the southeast, windstorms, other climate impacts here in the Midwest, you name it, on the East Coast, a racial reckoning that's long overdue in this country. There's a lot that's on everyone's mind. And just know that as admissions officers like myself, we are here to help you navigate this time from wherever you are. Rural is absolutely valued in this process. And if you have questions, be sure to reach out to your regional rep in our office. We're happy to answer your questions about our admissions process and direct you to other current students at Northwestern and other staff or resources that you might be curious about. So with that, thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. It has been an absolute pleasure spending this hour with you both and with all of you tuning in tonight. So thank you so much. Be well, be safe, stay healthy, and go Cats. Good night, everyone.